Welcome to the Healing Grove podcast. I'm Dr. Kristin, an integrative holistic family physician, author of Life After Lyme, and host in this virtual space of learning, healing, and growing. I believe humans are like trees, and our physical limb is only one of many. Health on all limbs of the tree, emotional, conceptual, social, spiritual, is absolutely required for the whole tree that is you to be vibrantly well. I created the Healing Grove podcast as a place to showcase some of the world's best integrative and holistic medicine, to expose you to transformative tools and mindset shifts for all limbs of your tree. I hope you enjoy our conversation in the Healing Grove today as much as I enjoyed having it. So welcome everyone to the Healing Grove podcast. My guest today is a dear friend, Dr. Chloe Weber, and someone who you may have heard on the podcast in the past. She has so many pearls that I wanted to bring her back. And she also has a whole new line of things that she's planning for this summer, actually. So I'm really excited for her to talk about that. Thanks for being here, Chloe.
Oh, it is always an honor and a pleasure to talk to you, Dr. Kristin.
So, for those who haven't met you yet, give us a little bit about yourself, in particular, the parts of your story that have led you to where you are today with this upcoming excitement.
Oh, man. Well, let's see. Where do we start? I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine. I got into the field largely because I felt like there was a massive gap between Western medicine and actual healthcare. And I was really focused on public health. But when I started volunteering in a hospital, I found that most of the care that was being given in the hospital was just putting a Band-Aid on whatever symptoms were going on, instead of really addressing the underlying issues beneath it. So as I started studying public health even more, I actually started doing acupuncture for my allergies and for quitting smoking cigarettes, I will admit. And I found it really, really fascinating, and then started diving into Chinese herbal medicine and realized that it's essentially customizable pharmaceuticals that are incredibly safe and effective and very versatile and dynamic. And ever since I started studying Chinese herbal medicine, I have not looked back. I've been obsessed with the idea of using Chinese herbs for public health intervention. And so I've used Chinese herbs to create a couple of businesses so far. My first one was Urban Herbs, which was a sliding scale Chinese herbal clinic in the Hood in Denver. My second was Radical Roots, which is a Chinese herb and CBD company that I used to create a better formula for my son Remy, who has a rare genetic disorder called STXBP1, which, one of the main challenges that we face is epilepsy. And so anybody who has a kiddo with epilepsy knows that it is absolutely horrifically managed by Western medicine. And so when I was looking at all the CBD products out there as an herbalist and as a doctor of Chinese medicine, I knew that the power of herbal medicine really lies in combining herbs together. So I created his formula, Remy's Revenge, and then built out a line around that. And I love our products. I'm super proud of those. And now, as a woman who is approaching or in perimenopause to whatever level, and is also a slightly burnt out mom, I am starting a new venture which is going to help support women's health and hormones. And I'm very excited to be advocating for women's health because I truly believe that women are our path towards building a healthier and happier society. So it's truly an honor to step into the space, and I'm super excited about it.
Oh, amazing. It's going to be so wonderful to have those things out and about and having people using them. You said so much in that short intro. I want to back up because I want to dig into a few of those little rich areas. So you used a bunch of words together describing Chinese herbs. I heard customizable pharmaceuticals, dynamic, and some of them have flown out of my brain, but there was like a list of things you like, criteria or maybe characteristics of Chinese herbs. And I want you to kind of explain each one of those things, because I know a lot of people don't have the familiarity that you have.
Sure, of course. So with Chinese herbs, we have about 400 different herbs in our pharmacopoeia that we use regularly. So in our medicine, what we're looking for the underlying patterns of disharmony within your body. So instead of just saying, you have a headache, we're going to look for what is causing that headache. So is that headache being caused by stress, causing stagnation, which is leading energy to move up towards your head? Is it causing from deficiency because you're run down? These are two very different patterns fundamentally. And so you want to treat them differently. You're not really trying to mask them. So in Chinese medicine, once we sort of find the underlying pattern of disharmony, we use some of these 400 herbs together to create formulas that are incredibly safe and effective. And so what makes them so safe and effective is that we're using small amounts of each herb together to create a formula. So, sometimes, some herbs are supporting the liver, others might be supporting the kidneys. So it's not just hitting this one pathway like in Western medicine. Instead, it's dynamically supporting your body. It's supporting your emotions as well as your physiology. So I find that Chinese herbal medicine is able to safely and effectively treat nearly any condition, particularly those that do not need an emergency room, better than Western pharmaceuticals, because Western pharmaceuticals typically, again, are just looking for one particular pathway. They're not looking at the greater scope of the ecology of the body, whereas in Chinese medicine, we're looking at the symptoms and we're looking at the underlying presentation, and we're looking to bring the body and the brain back to homeostasis, so you're really functioning as optimally as possible.
So one question I always have when I think about just how wide-ranging and efficacious herbs are is, what the heck? Like, how did plants get so smart? You may not have an answer for that, but like I would love to hear it if you have any kind of like plant whisperer insights into this question, because to me, I just feel like it seems as though for any problem we could manifest, there's something in nature that can solve the problem or help bring the body back into harmony and balance. Am I wrong about that?
Well, I think it brings it back to the reality that Mother Nature is the answer to all things, like the innate wisdom that is the environment and is our natural plants, and our bodies, is far beyond anything that we'll ever be able to comprehend with our Western minds. I mean, when you look at nature, it's so much more brilliant than we can ever be. And our bodies are a microcosm of the macrocosm that is nature and the environment. And so I think, I look at women's health and you're like, do we have the power to heal ourselves? And then anybody who's been pregnant, who has made a human knows that, like, there's no instruction manual that comes with that. Your body just does it. We have this innate intelligence within our bodies to literally create life. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And so you translate that into nature and it's just astounding what's out there. And so I think minimizing herbal medicine is very dangerous. And I think there are a lot of restrictions and a lot of censorship of herbal medicine, particularly when you're talking about hemp or cannabis. But when it comes to even Chinese herbs, there's a lot of stigma, a lot of backlash. And I do believe that that's, deeply tied into the pharmaceutical interests of, censoring that stuff. So that's always a fun.
Tell me a little bit more about that, because I don't think I was aware that there's stigma around Chinese herbs.
Oh, yes. Well, with Chinese herbs, I mean, I think there's just a lot of people who are very concerned about the pesticides and heavy metals, which is fair. So at Radical, and with Noxie, the new company, we only buy from this one company, Spring Wind. All of the herbs are tested. Literally, if an herb is not clean enough and I cannot get it clean enough, a product will be out of stock until I get that. I'm that kind of a psycho. Um, but so there is risk with that. But at the flip side, everything coming in from China is heavily tested as it's coming through the borders into the United States, whereas products made in the States are not as heavily tested and can just be sold much more readily to Americans. So there is a bit of safety there. I think there's a lot of stigma in terms of people just assuming that it's folk medicine that's not effective, that we're killing rhinos, all of these things. You know, a lot of those animal products that we've used historically in Chinese medicine are studied for their historical value, and they have been used historically in Chinese medicine, but they have not been used in hundreds and hundreds of years. So I think a lot of people just have a lot of fear and misconceptions of what our medicine is like, instead of really understanding that it's a medical paradigm that has been honed over thousands of years and has millions and millions of doctors who have added to our evidence-based body of research, that's made it incredibly effective. And I'm truly honored to be able to practice it as well.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your journey sort of from radical roots to this new launch you're going to be doing around women's health. I mean, in particular, I'm interested in sort of the personal aspects of it, because it seems like, you know, Remy's Revenge and then Radical Roots really came out of your personal journey with your child. And I'm always impressed with people who go through the ringer and then say, what nugget of this can I bring to the world and make everyone else's lives better based on my learning? So kudos to you. It seems like you might be doing that again with this new company. So I kind of want to hear the details of that, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Yeah, well, I think for me, a lot of it is if I'm solving a problem for myself, I might as well see if I can solve it for other people, right? And again, I love Chinese medicine, and I'm very passionate about spreading our wisdom to more people and empowering people to be proactive with their health and shift the paradigm to proactive medicine with herbal medicine instead of reactive medicine with pharmaceuticals.
Mhm.
So, you know, as a mom, as a single mom of a child with multiple disabilities, as a nearly 41-year-old, I am approaching perimenopause, and most of my friends are in a similar position. Most of them have children and are incredibly stressed out and overwhelmed and run down. And I'm always amazed that I seem to be happier and healthier than most of the people that I know who are in a similar, or not similar, somewhat similar phase. A lot of them have a lot more support than I do. And so I'm like, what is going on here? So to me, you know, it all comes back to the herbs and the knowledge that I've been gifted with Chinese medicine, and also the deep challenges that I've faced with Remy that have forced me to really focus on self-care. And so what I see when I look at other moms out there are a lot of women who are sacrificing their health, their mental health, their physical health in order to take care of everybody else around them. And it's really causing a massive detriment, not only to them, but to our society at large, because women are the creators of, you know, of all of us first and foremost, but also women are the foundation of health within their families and thus within society at large. And so I really am passionate about helping empower women to balance their hormones, which I am seeing fluctuate more and more as I get older, right? So I want them to balance their hormones and start ingesting this herbal medicine that sort of takes nature and brings it within their body to help bring that wisdom within ourselves so that we can really show up as the best versions of ourselves. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's an inspiring vision, and I want that for all women too. I love what you said about women, you know, being responsible. The midwife who delivered or, you know, birthed with me for my last child used to say, women birth the world. We birthed the world. It's like, yeah, who else would have done it, you know? But you don't think about that often. And it is a very powerful statement and realization. And it's not just like you birth your child and then the work is done, mischief managed, right? It's like that's where the work begins, and it's for life. And then you add a few more to the mix or not, but like either way, it's for life. And it's a heavy responsibility. The stakes feel really incredibly high. And nobody, you know, nobody knows a kid better than their parents. And nobody sacrifices more. So I really love that you are empowered and empowering women and passionate about supporting women in this way. So thank you.
No, it really is an honor. Like it's something that I think is so necessary. I've been diving into a lot of the women's health issues that are going on, and it's such a fascinating, multifaceted issue. Like there's it's touched by, chronic health disorders, chronic stress, but also environmental toxins. If you look at fertility issues, I mean, even, if you look at fertility issues in men, I think Shana Swan is saying that by 2045, the average sperm count is going to be zero. You know, Women are dealing with PCOS, endometriosis regularly. And then, Western medicine just really does not have much to offer us. So it's incredibly disappointing. I read something the other day that said that one of the most common side effects for Western medicine for women is that it just straight up doesn't work because it was never tested on women. And you're just like, it's mind boggling to me. I mean, it's not surprising at all, but there are so many facets of our society that are leading to this epidemic of chronic health disorders within women and these massive hormonal imbalances that are causing increased stress and health issues on so many levels, that it's really fascinating and exciting to dive into as like a super nerd and as somebody who wants to advocate for all of these facets. So I'm excited to continue to learn more and to see other ways that I can advocate and support other women and remind them that we're human and that we deserve to be cared for as well, the way that we care for other people. So
Yeah. And that sometimes there's a need to shift away from kind of this idea that we must do minimal self-care in order to be maximally effective for those we love and serve, into the mindset of actually it's maximal self-care that puts you in a place that's not only maximally effective, but then sustainably so.
yeah.
Sustainably so.
Yeah. Well, and self-care is really hard. I think in our society, women, we're now able to work, which is great. I think we both passionately love our careers, and I couldn't imagine anything else. I am also very dedicated to being a mom, and that's also, one of the greatest honors and joys of my life. Um, but we're expected to work to make the money, and still, those transitions to shifting the balance of home life and responsibility has not quite gotten there. So for many families that I know, women are still working full time, some of them making as much or more money than their partners. And they're also doing the majority of the housework, a majority of the unpaid labor in terms of navigating doctors for the children and play dates and all of the things like that, the food. And the husbands are stepping up in certain circumstances. And I think that balance is hopefully moving in the right direction. I don't know that it is. I know a lot of families where it's not. Again, I'm rocking this alone, so I certainly do not have that support on the other end. But that's obviously an extreme situation. But women are really, really tapped out. So finding the time and the space to take care of yourself seems like an impossible task for most women. But what I always really like to focus on is something is better than nothing. Like I really try and focus on encouraging women to take a small bit of time for yourself, whether it's literally lock everybody out of the bathroom and like sit in there for 2 minutes and just do some deep breathing, do some box breathing, do some humming, whatever it is that's going to help settle your nervous system and give you a second to yourself. Try and go on an extra walk, whatever it is, like make yourself a fancy cup of hot. I've been making myself this fancy hot chocolate that's like so good. And I'm so excited at nighttime. I'm like, I got my hot chocolate. Whatever it is, whatever little treat you can give yourself, whatever time, whatever space, particularly if you can get outside, every little bit really truly does add up, and you start feeling more and more like yourself, and then you're able to find more resilience and, oddly enough, a little bit more time to increase that space where you're taking care of yourself more and more.
Are you willing to share some more specifics about your self-care regimen and also the places that you are like on your learning edge or struggling? I think it would be inspiring for us to hear kind of what parts you struggle with.
Oh, sure. Um, well, I am very fortunate because I work for myself by myself at home. That has blessings and curses. There's very few things that are more isolated than being a solo entrepreneur and a single mom to a child with multiple disabilities. So I know you probably have some other special needs mamas on here. So shout out to all of them. Um, so the isolation is one of the biggest challenges for me, for sure. It's very hard making new friends, and it's very hard getting out so that I can do things without Remy. I've shared with you earlier, Remy has been doing a lot of hysterical crying recently, which is really challenging on my nervous system. So I've just been chugging a lot of CBD. And if he's hysterically crying and I need a break, I will put him in his activity chair where he's sort of safely there. I will put on like a video or something for him and I will go and lie down for 10 minutes and do a meditation, or I'll go and shower. I'll take some time and breathe, and come back to it. And if he's hysterically crying that entire time, then he is hysterically crying that entire time. And I know that I need to go and self regulate. Otherwise, it's just a spiral for us both.
Mm.
Um, Food is always a huge priority for me, but I also just love food so much. So I'm always cooking, I'm always eating. I probably should eat less, but I just enjoy it. I always make sure that I'm going out. I recently got a puppy, so I have a 10-month-old German Shepherd puppy who refuses to be tired ever. Like there's just no exhausting this beast. Um, so I have the luxury of being able to take him on hikes fairly regularly because we're in Boulder. So I make sure that I'm outside for at least an hour a day with him. And a lot of that time I'm still working. A lot of times I'm studying for a podcast that I'm going to interview somebody for or be on, or studying, listening to books, doing whatever. But being outside means the world to me and makes such a difference on how I'm able to show up. And then I also take my herbs and do the best that I can to take care of myself. But largely, a lot of it is also like giving yourself a little bit of grace to be imperfect. Like I I know that I'll never be perfect in any way, shape, or form. And I have radically accepted that reality. So when I drop a ball, when my house is a bit of a mess, which it is currently, it's like it is what it is. I'm going to get to what I can get to right now. And I'm not going to beat myself up about these things that I can't control. So I try and find that balance for myself. And sometimes I do better than others. Um, but it's a journey and it's something that I think we all need to find the space for and continue to work on.
Thank you so much for walking us through that. I think that, the more we can bring awareness to our own micro decisions in a day, in a week, in a year about how we're caring for ourselves, the more we're able to kind of make intentional decisions. And that whole piece about giving yourself grace, giving ourselves grace is huge, right? I mean, the goal is not even perfection, right? I mean, I feel like a lot of what I feel about this, I've learned from yoga, which is it's not about like looking like the instructor, who, by the way, also isn't perfect. It's about loving yourself in the midst of challenge, finding finding your breath, finding your capacity to hold stillness, even while you're holding challenging poses in life, and still being able to love yourself when you have to come out of the pose.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and life is not going to get easier for most of us. Things are, whatever stressful event or circumstance you're in right now, that may pass. But it's only a matter of time before some other stressor comes rearing its head, trying to get your attention.
Yeah.
And so it's always really about becoming more resilient and being able to ride those waves as opposed to blocking yourself off from the challenges that is life, because that's just impossible. But yeah, I think we just also need to be a lot kinder to ourselves. I mean, if you look at how the average person speaks to themselves versus how they would speak to somebody that they loved, the dichotomy is dramatic, and you see this all the time. I see it with myself. I see it with all the people that I love and that I talk to in my life. I'm like, how would you possibly feel that way about yourself? Like, would you ever think that about somebody else in that circumstance? And it's never. So I think, starting to be aware of that self-talk. I've also been doing EMDR for the past 2 years, which I really, really love. I've got to say that's been really helpful for me in identifying the patterns within relationships that I've had and within, myself and the triggers that come up for me. So yeah, I do just think everybody has their own path and their own way forward, but finding ways that you can work in some self-care is really radical for women these
It's
days.
radical. That's exactly right. It's revolutionary and it's radical and it's mandatory.
Well, and if you really look at the situation, like we've let men run the books for quite a while, and things aren't exactly going fantastic, So I think the more that we can step into our power and take care of ourselves and show up, the better we'll be able to shift. I mean, I said it before, but like to really help us shift and create the world in which we wish to see, because women are the creators in our society and we have the power to do that if we work together and if we take care of ourselves and each other.
Amen to that. I mean, we birthed the world. Someone said once, I don't know if this was anonymous or I'm just forgetting who to attribute to, but I loved it. It said, if the world as it is breaks your heart, it means that you're here to birth a new one.
I love that.
And I think it's true. I think we're at a turning point. This is it, we're on a path to destruction. One of my mentors who taught me which is a tapping based off of EMDR, used to say, we're on a collective suicide mission. And that's a decision and a pattern and a path born of micro decisions every day. And I think to the extent that we can heal ourselves, work through our traumas, nourish our bodies and our minds and our spirits, I think we do have a chance, as long as we are willing to commit to that path and do the work.
Absolutely. No, that's beautifully said. I yeah. I mean, I know you and I both advocate a lot in terms of children's health and the decimation of our children's health. And I think that is a massive wake-up call to a lot of us mothers. And I think a lot of us are heeding the call and starting to do what we can to create a healthier and happier world. And a lot of that, again, comes down to our homes and our families. And so I launched my podcast last year, and you were gracious enough to be on it. And one of my top listened episodes, and one of my very favorites, I was just getting some clips from it the other day and cracking up to myself. But the podcast is called Radical Remedy, and I was just like, what is a radical remedy? Like, we're just trying to come up with a podcast name. It's not my favorite. It is what it is. But I'm like, the radical remedy is really like accountability for ourselves and starting to build health within our homes, so that can then expand outwards into our communities and into our society, and so that we can build health within and without, because as I keep saying, like, we are a microcosm of the macrocosm. So the work that we do internally radiates out, and we're able to help more people. We're able to be a light for other people who are in a similar challenge, who are looking to find a way out of that challenge. So I really think that taking care of ourselves and doing that work can never be underestimated in terms of the impact that it can have on the larger society, even if it just feels like you're just doing it just to get through the day.
And just to extend that a little bit more and make sure it feels inclusive to someone who might not have children or might not even be a woman, like, this is for all of us, right? The micro decisions that we make us way showers in whatever direction we're headed. And so I think we have to be aware that our actions have impacts on other people. People are watching. People are people are dissatisfied with the way the world is. And as a result, they're looking for ways to step up differently, to be in the world differently. And I think we all need to take responsibility for being way showers, because we all are way showers to everyone around us.
Yeah. Well, and a good note to put in there is, you know, I know it sounds sort of like I'm man hating. I'm not. I love men and all anybody who associates with any sort of gender whatsoever. I think we're all just, you know, I don't creations of God or of some deeper wisdom or the Tao or whatever it is that you believe. I think everybody's beautiful, but I do think that it's that feminine aspect of our society that has been stifled in so many ways that needs to come forward. I think there's a lot of challenges for the masculine energy in today's society as well. It's just not my personal lived experience, so it's not where I'm personally advocating for. But it is an important point because I think whenever I talk about women's health, inevitably some men get very defensive about that and feel like I'm talking against them. And I'm like, there's nothing, there's no against, there's just talking about these facts. That women's health has been largely neglected by Western medicine, and it's vitally important. You know, I had PUPPs when I was pregnant. Have you heard of PUPPs? The plaques and particles. What is it? Do you know what the acronym is for?
Something urticaria, plaques and papules, purpura, urticaria, maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of P's. Like, I'll look it up. So it's a rash, an itchy rash.
It's hell. It's like this pregnancy rash that is actual hell. It was like the worst thing. And I'm always curious about how that may have interplayed with Remy and whether that might have been an indication of some sort of something that was going on. But it's this pregnancy rash that you get when pregnant. And so you're already making a person. It's the most itchy situation you've ever had. I have horrific allergies and I've been through lots of rashes in my life. It was like actual hell. It was one of the worst like 2 weeks of my life and then like I was able to figure it out and get through it. Pine tar soap for anybody who is dealing with that is definitely part of it. I don't remember the rest of what I did, but the pine tar soap was clutch. But I remember talking to my doctors and they were like, well, it's never been studied before because it's rare and it only happens to women during pregnancy. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, how is this a sentence that comes out of your mouth as a doctor? It's so baffling to me.
It's one of those random things that I remember learning in med school and was like, okay, just file that away because they're not giving me all the information I need to really understand what the heck is going on. I looked it up. It's pruritic urticarial plaques and papules of pregnancy. So basically itchy rash of pregnancy.
It's honestly horrible. It's the worst.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry you went through that, but I'm glad you found your way to a natural remedy. So speaking of issues in women and natural remedies, I want to hear a little bit more about this new line of things you're doing. And in particular, are you using them yet? What are you finding? And what's the whole concept here?
Cool. So I am very excited about it. So I'll give a brief explanation of how Chinese medicine looks at women's cycles and what I created, because it's a little bit more complex than just like one formula for one issue. It's a modular system of 4 different formulas. So in Chinese medicine, the main organs that are connected to our cycle are the kidneys, the spleen, the liver, and the heart. So the kidneys in Chinese medicine, and when we're talking about organs in Chinese medicine, we're really talking about the energetic actions of the organ. So sometimes that overlaps a bit with the physiological actions, but I always like to warn people, if I say you have an issue with your heart, that likely means you have an issue with your spirit. That doesn't mean that you actually have a physiological issue with your heart. So for anybody listening, that's just a little caveat for you. So the kidneys in Chinese medicine are the foundation of health and vitality overall. The kidneys store what we call essence, as well as menstrual fire. So it's basically our DNA, all of the energy that we inherit from our parents. It's our reproductive energy. It's the energy that sort of fades as we age over time. So in Chinese medicine, we also look at the balance between yin and yang within the body. So yang is sort of the fire of the body, the energetic action. The yin you can think of as more of the feminine, the water, the fluid, the inward and cold. So as we age, yin tends to deplete, so we get more dryness. And then what we see is the yang flares up because the yin is not in balance. So that's where we get hot flashes, right? So the kidneys are very, very important, both for reproduction and then also for aging and for menopause. The liver is really in charge of the free flow of qi and blood throughout the body. So in Chinese medicine, when there's stagnation, you're going to see pain. So largely what we see with the liver that interacts with the cycle is that you're going to get stressed out and you're going to have some stagnation of the liver. Then you're going to get PMS symptoms. You might see endometriosis. You might have some sort of cyst. But you're definitely going to have those classical PMS symptoms. So you want to encourage the free flow of qi and blood throughout the liver while also nourishing the liver blood. The third is the spleen, which is in charge of digesting both emotions and foods. So if the spleen is weak, then you're going to see overthinking, overworrying. You might see monkey mind before bed, penchant for allergies, sort of damp accumulation. Again, think of like PCOS, sort of a little bit of weight accumulation potentially, weak stool, like loose stools and weak digestion is sort of when you see spleen qi deficiency. And the spleen and the liver interact very closely. And then last we have the heart. So the heart brings the blood around the body, and the heart is in charge of the spirit, and it houses the spirit. So if the heart is taxed, then you're going to see anxiety, depression, you might have insomnia, heart palpitations, all of those things, a lot of those things that are really common in hormonal imbalances as well. And so the heart and the kidneys are on this axis, and they have a dynamic interplay between the two of them. So when I was thinking about women's health, I was thinking about how every week of a woman's cycle, you're really supporting a different hormonal shift, right? So if I'm working with a patient one-on-one, it's not uncommon for me to give you a different formula for every week of the month if we're trying to regulate your hormones, if we're trying to get you pregnant, if we're trying to deal with any of these more complicated challenges. That's not very feasible, for everybody. So what I created was a modular system where we basically have a formula for the kidneys, one for the spleen, one for the liver, one for the heart. And so people will take a very extensive quiz on our website, and then they'll be put into one of these 8 different buckets with their Chinese medicine diagnosis. And then they'll be recommended probably 2 formulas per month is how I've made it work out to. So you'll probably have one formula for the first half of the month and a second formula for the second half of the month. And so I'm hoping that that's not too complicated for women. I think that we can do it. But I really feel like it is the most dynamic way to support women's hormones. I think it's as close as I can possibly get to customizing herbal formulas for women in a way that's accessible for people to get, essentially off of the shelf. And I'm super excited to get it out there. I've had a couple of my friends using it, and they've had incredible results. I've been using it. I mean, I basically use it because in Chinese medicine, so Revive from Radical Roots is basically a kidney tonic, and then Flow State is the Move the Qi and blood tonic. So that's sort of what I do all of the time already. So it's very fun and very exciting and very challenging.
Oh my, it sounds incredibly complex, but it also sounds like you've simplified it as much as possible in order to customize it and also make it sustainable. So tell me a little bit more about the herbs that are in here. Are these herbs that are like chosen by you because of what they do for these various organs? Are they classically used for women's health? Like, how did you come up with these formulas?
Both. So typically when I'm writing a formula line for retail, It's my very favorite thing to do is writing custom herbal formulas. Writing herbal formulas for masses is much more complicated, but also a very fun challenge. But so we have a lot of classical Chinese herbal formulas, as you alluded to. And so what I'll do is I'll look at, so like menopause is classically, as I was saying, kidney yin deficiency is the primary symptom, and then you're going to have heat as well for most women. Often you're going to see a little liver qi stagnation. So I looked at all of the formulas that were classically used for kidney yin deficiency for menopausal patterns, which there are many. And then I sort of synthesized them into a formula where it's addressing not only the kidney yin, but some of the other patterns that we might see presenting. And then what's complex about it is that I need to sort of interplay that with each of the other formulas. So I needed to make sure that each of the four played well together to get the exact results that I was looking to get. So they're not classical formulas, they are custom formulas that I wrote. The regulate one is based off of Xiao San, which is classically used for regulating women's cycles, really great for PMS symptoms. It's called Free and Easy Wanderer, easily the most widely prescribed Chinese herbal formula for women in today's society. But I modified that one also so that it was addressing a couple of other things emotionally as well, so that it's sort of taking these classical formulas and updating them for what we're seeing today in today's society. It's we're not in ancient China where where we have some more, where we're living in harmony with the environment with organic foods and whatnot. So there are a couple other challenges that we're
Also with
facing.
bound heat, right? There might have been harmony with the environment, but there was a lot of struggle and strife and suffering for women in particular.
Absolutely. Well, and they were dealing with a whole lot of other challenges that we are absolutely not, as I sit here on my biomat in my office.
Tell me a little bit more about how these formulas interact with people who are making their own hormones, for example, like premenopause, perimenopause, and then also for women who are who have found their way onto bioidentical hormones, for example. Is there any contraindication there? Is it synergistic? Does it change how you prescribe, knowing that someone's on a synthetic or bioidentical hormone?
It just so all the research that I've seen and all the experience I've had with my patients is it just accentuates the effectiveness of the bioidentical hormones. So it just makes it so you can likely use less, so you're feeling better. So that's something I always recommend that people start working with, like talk with their doctors with about what you're using. But in Chinese medicine, we're not giving, like there are some herbs that have estrogenic properties. Supplementing estrogen, it's helping your body create its own estrogen and balancing that out more. So what I find and what most of the research I've seen looks like is that it's really helping balancing those hormones, whether you're pre-menopause or post-menopause. It's gonna help just sort of help your body do exactly what it's supposed to be doing throughout that cycle, so that you're having the right hormone balance at the right time of the month and optimizing, your luteal phase and your follicular phase and making sure that everything's flowing freely instead of stagnating.
And freely and easily wandering out.
Exactly.
And is it appropriate for teenagers? I mean, is it appropriate for young girls? Like where'd be the cutoff for who's the sort of perfect user?
Well, it's totally great for teenagers and young girls. I mean, that's one of the things. So for a long time, so it's funny because like now I'm looking at it through the perimenopause and then menopause sort of perspective, which a lot of what I'm learning is that the more you regulate your cycle when you're in perimenopause, the easier menopause is going to be. So I'm hoping I can manage that well and smoothly. But one of the reasons I really wanted to do this was for a long time, I also had this in my head where I'm like, all these young girls are being put on birth control for PMDD or PMS symptoms and for regulating their cycles. And that's destroying their gut. That's causing long-term neurological shifts. That's causing hormonal shifts. That's, it has a whole slew of downstream effects that are really detrimental to teenagers' health. So I obviously would not prefer for any teenage girl to be on birth control. Obviously, do not get pregnant unless you're ready to get pregnant. That is a whole commitment as a mom. But, if there's a better way, which, I was always like, I wish we could just get Shaghouse on. I wish we could get Free and Easy Wanderer into all of these teenage girls. It would just change their lives. I mean, within a couple of cycles, with a couple of months of being on flow state, your cycle will dramatically shift. And that's just like a basic one. So with this, it'll be even more tailored to what's going on. But for most teenagers, really all they'll need is the regulate formula, and that'll balance their cycle and balance their hormones so that they're feeling their best. They're reducing their PMS symptoms, they're reducing PMDD, they're reducing all of those cramping issues. So they're able to show up and not have to be on those pharmaceuticals.
Wow, it sounds amazing. I'm already thinking of several people who I need to send your way. Are you doing sort of one-on-one consultation with people the way you were with Radical Roots for a while, where people could reach out to you and kind of get some input?
Yeah.
Just the computerized test that they take on the website?
No. So through Radical, you can always still get, I mean, either like anybody can get me anyway. So through Radical on the contact us page, you can set up like a free 15-minute consult with me. On noxyherbs.com, there will be a way to set up a call with me. We'll likely switch that to other practitioners down the line, but I'm sure I'll be doing it for the summer at least. So that we can really fine tune things for people who have more complicated cases. Because I do just genuinely want people to feel their best, and I'm happy to do so. And then I do custom herbs for some patients as well. So you can sign up for that on the Radical Roots website as well. So if people had something that was a little bit more complicated and wanted a fully customized formula, then I can do that way also.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I'm sort of curious. You said you've had some friends who've had some transformative results. Would you be willing to share, of course, without any personalized, information, identifiable information, like what sort of stories you've been seeing with these?
Well, mainly again, I've been working with people around my age. I'm really focused on the mom group right now because that's where I'm at. So I feel like you treat what you know a lot of the time. But so two of my friends have been on it. They've both been dealing with perimenopausal shifts with radically fluctuating hormones. And one had, her cycle had reduced to about 23 days from 28 over the past 2 years. So after 3 months on it, we've got her up to 26-day cycles, which is really exciting because that just shows that she's sort of nourishing her body in a way that can sustain those longer cycles. The other one has a history of endometriosis, and so that has caused a lot of issues. So what I see clinically is like a lot of times the underlying patterns of disharmony that we have when we're younger, if we're not dealing with that as you get to perimenopause and then menopause, those things just really start rearing their heads and getting worse and worse. So her cycles were getting to the point where, almost 10 days of her cycle were just pain, and it wasn't just a couple of days of pain and agony. It was prolonged for practically a third of the month.
Wow.
So that has been dramatically reduced. The quality of the pain and the duration of the pain has gone down really dramatically. And again, we normally expect that within about a 3-month cycle. So what I'm aiming to have people do is you take the quiz, you get 3 months on whatever formulas you're recommended, and then you take the quiz again. And ideally that has shifted, and then you can move on to your next sort of phase of the herbs, because ideally you're actually healing and growing and getting better instead of just taking the same supplements ongoing forever.
Okay, so the herbs would shift then over time as your symptoms start to shift and evolve and resolve.
Yeah. I mean, depending on what you have going on. So, ideally what you're going to get to is where you have sort of the nourish, which is the kidney formula, which nourishes the blood, helps nourish the kidneys. That's ideally sort of the first half of your cycle. And then the regulate, which is sort of like flow state, the liver formula, is the second half of your cycle. And then as you go through menopause, then you're mainly going to be on the nourish and probably the heart calming formula as well, because that's going to help with the hot flashes and just letting you settle into that next great stage of our lives, which is really interesting. I was reading an article about how only like 3 different mammals have grandmas, like how menopause is only a state. So once you lose fertility as a woman, typically we die in most in most mammals. But I think elephants and humans and one other animal, I think, live past menopause as women. And the person was making the argument that the wisdom of grandmas is so essential to our survival that that's why we made this evolutionary leap to keeping women around past our fertility window, which is a really interesting and bizarre way to think about it. But it's also kind of incredible if you think about it as well, because that sort of shows the innate brilliance and wisdom of women that goes far beyond our ability to reproduce, as you were saying before, you know?
Wow, I love that. That's really interesting to think about. I wonder who that third mammal is. Maybe dolphins.
I was thinking dolphins also. I'll look it up after.
I kind of want it to be dolphins. I can imagine us sitting around, on an island with some elephants and some dolphins and like the grandmothers, like the larger, the meta board,
I love it.
directors, grandmother directors. Oh, awesome. So how can people find this? If people are looking for Noxie, what's the best way for them to start their journey?
So Noxie, you can go to noxieherbs.com, Noxi. And if you want to try Radical, that's radicalrootsherbs.com. And then the podcast is at radicalremedy.org. And I'm hoping not to start another business for at least a year.
At least 1 year. Okay. Yeah, you do move really, really quickly. Let's just hope that this is a nice settling point, for you and for Remy, especially as he's going through changes and challenges right now. It's so hard when we're driven in the way that you're driven. I feel you, but like my vision, my hope for you is that you can rest on your laurels a tiny bit more than usual and enjoy the fruits of your efforts before you move on to the next thing.
Yeah, no, I am really excited. Well, I mean, I really love, I don't know what your experience is, but I really love doing my podcast. So I'm really excited to do more of that. That's something that I find that every time I'm done recording an episode, I have so much energy and I'm so excited. It's such an honor to get to pick the brains of all of my heroes. It just blows my mind every time I get to do it. I can't say that it's like successful yet, but it is just like such a passion project for me. And doing this, I think a lot of, I'm really excited, as I said, to get into women's health and to be advocating for other women to take care of themselves and to find deeper joy and health and vitality. So it brings me so much joy and health and vitality to be able to advocate in that way. And so I do think, I mean, I do get plenty of time with Rem, and I think he's about to be out of school on Thursday, so we will be spending a lot of extra time exploring the mountains of Colorado. So it'll be a fun summer.
Amazing. And just to make sure we're on the same page, if you are getting joy and vitality and rejuvenation out of something, I would say by definition it's successful.
Oh, for sure. That is true.
Well, I wish you the best in your continued ventures. I'm so excited to share and to lean into some of the things you're offering. I'm definitely, as a woman of a certain age, I too am interested in what Chinese herbs might be able to do for me and my vitality and my ability to keep moving forward too and doing all the things that I love. So thank you for bringing this to the world and for sharing with us kind of the origin story of Noxie.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's always such a joy to see you.
It's always a joy. Thanks, Chloe.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Healing Grove podcast. If you liked it, please be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to deepen your experience further, consider grabbing a copy of the Healing Grove Playbook. With journal prompts for this podcast and 41 others, it's the perfect place to record your learnings, keep track of the tools you explore, and reflect on your own experience. Finally, it's important to mention that even though I am a doctor, nothing you hear on this podcast, whether from myself or my guests, constitutes medical advice. Any intervention you try should always be discussed with and supervised by a trusted member of your own healing team. Thanks for listening, and see you next time in the Healing Grove.